Our next section is devoted to a consideration of priorities for global health. And to start us off, we're going to meet Ola Rosling, who is president of the Gapminder Foundation and the author of the book Factfulness. And he sent out some questions that many of you have answered. So he's going to tell you why you went to the trouble. Now, please welcome Ola.
Hello. Can we start by raising our hand if we answered my questions? Yes, to see. That's an amazing response rate. Clap your hands, please, just for that achievement. Because unfortunately there will be very few opportunities to clap hands. We're going to look at your results. And I'm actually a bit nervous. A prerequisite for good health is that you are alive, right? And I wonder if I will come home alive after this. If you want to check the data sources to defend yourself and so on, you can follow this link. Let's start with the first question. I'm pretty nervous, actually. I bought this new shirt just to make sure that I look proper. I think my mom is in the audience somewhere. Are you here? Is she over there? Yeah, we clap your hand for, because maybe you will have to comfort me afterward. Yeah, clap your hands for my mother. This is a very difficult question for human beings to answer. In 1990, 58% of humanity lived in something called low-income countries. What the heck is that? How many are there today? Okay, let's look at this graph first. This shows GDP per capita, rich and poor, right and left. Up and down is sick and down is healthy in terms of child mortality. The country sizes is population, the color is regions. The thing is that this was the world in 1950, okay? Since then, it has changed. Back then, there was a group of countries, 90% of humanity, called developing countries. And the problem that I see when I look at your results is that in your brains, you still have a group of countries called developing countries, which is the majority of people, the poor, the many. And that's why you score so bad. We're going to look at that. Let's fix the problem. Here it is. The world changed, okay? With vaccinations, antibiotics, but primarily mothers who go to school. Child mortality decreased everywhere, okay? In these poorest countries, right? In 1990, this was part of the question. 58% lived in so-called low-income countries. They were still poor, but the health problem had started to decline. And then with a healthy population, you can also get rich. Look what happened next. They stopped being low-income countries. They moved their countries out of low income during the last decades, and the rest of the world didn't really notice, right? We still think of them as the poor, right? But today, only 9% live in low-income countries. A majority, 73%, live in something called middle-income countries, which you never hear about in the news. That's where humanity lives. And then we in Stockholm, etc., we live in the high-income countries, right? But the problem for everybody, pretty much everyone, I have tested the public in US and UK with thousands of questions, and I extracted the trickiest one. Was it uncomfortable answering the questions? This is the selection where the public scores worst when it comes to public data. So this is an evidence lecture. I know what you don't know, so I make sure that I'm not telling you what you already know. The middle group is so big, I'm going to divide it in two, lower middle income and upper middle income. And that's what we really need to understand, because that's the majority. Child mortality, as was mentioned, dropped from 40% roughly of children dying before age 5 100 years ago. 10 times fewer. So if you're going to a party tonight or anything, now you have something to celebrate, right? Humanity just forgets to celebrate when we actually succeed. And then we tell our kids that everything is getting worse. No, we can tell them that because they are alive, right? Remember that. So, yeah, exactly. Yeah, clap your hands. Yeah. Take every opportunity to clap your hands. We will look at your results soon. I'm going to change this graph to size instead of population, the number of children. And then actually the two biggest bubbles are Nigeria and India, where most children die in 2022. So the differences between countries are quite big. But if we split the countries in terms of economy, economy into 10 deciles by income. The health of different deciles in the countries look very different. Everywhere the poorest have higher child mortality still today, even though we have solutions for saving these children. It's money, right? There's actually very little new innovations needed to save these children. Hardly any at all, because our children survive, right? In Nigeria, the difference is enormous, right? Between the poorest and the richest decile. The same goes for other parts of the world, and everywhere, people in extreme poverty have more child deaths. Out of 5 million dead children in 2022, 2 million were in extreme poverty. If we go across all countries, even in the middle-income countries, some are extremely poor, of course, and then they have the high child mortality. There are differences, but generally this is how unequal the world is, right? Half of those deaths are attributed to some form of undernutrition. Either too little energy or too little nutrients in your food, right? The rest of us, we have enough food, as you can see. Right? So this problem is solvable. It was solvable for all of us. The money, on the other hand, is up here in Stockholm and in the high income end, right? So this is tricky to answer these questions with the brain full of media images, stereotypes, outdated data, and you probably don't spend every day on the UN statistic website like I do. No. So it's tricky to answer, right? Actually, I asked this question in 32 countries. This is the correct answer. And only 7% of people answered it correctly. Here is your result. A big applause. You were better than the public across 32 countries and better than the Swedes, right? The general public knows, so you can go out and brag, I know stuff about public health. Unfortunately, these are ABC questions. And if I take them to the monkeys and give them ABC bananas, they have a 33% chance of picking the right banana. Yes, I'm glad that you laugh, because it's really fascinating how the human brain works. Across countries, how on earth can people score worse than monkeys? Country after country after country. We have very similar human brains. We have stereotypes, we have outdated myths, right? That's what I'm working with, trying to fix. This is what people answered across the countries. These are the 12 questions. I'm going to go through them. Actually, I try to comfort you by checking the AI bots. So last week, we got the results. We have tested all the new chat bots, and here are their results. Unfortunately, they scored very well on all the questions. No, not all the questions. We should be super careful putting chatbots in the classrooms, right? Look, they may mislead our children. And here are the human results. We can sort them by your score. Actually, there was one question where you scored better than monkeys, right? That's comforting, right? But on the other questions, I mean, you care about public health. Why on earth would you be here otherwise? But when do you actually sit down and learn the facts? You talk to your colleagues and they are equally wrong like the general public, and we just confirm each other's misunderstandings. That's why we need to check data. It's really difficult. So I'm going to go through all of these questions. I have to speed up actually very much. Here are your results. You could score 12. The monkey scored 4. Actually, your average was 2.7. That's not perfect. 14% scored better. Here are the chatbot results. They were way better than human beings. Not perfect though. 45 of you scored 0. Can you please stand up? Is that fun? Yeah, because it's embarrassing to be wrong. And that's the problem. We need to be humble and realize being wrong is an opportunity to learn new stuff. Okay? So let's look at these. First, development. We looked at the mental health. I'm going to go through after lunch. And then the aging data. But let me now use the last part of this session to look into nutrition. Actually, only 8% of people die caused by nutrition overweight. You thought it was much larger, right? African child overweight. This question was obviously very tricky. 25% of children who are overweight live in Africa. But in our brains, Africa is synonym to hunger. So we can't answer this question correctly, right? It's just simple math. You could do it at home. Let me finish with this climate insight, which is absolutely amazing. Perceiving climate as a threat. 73% in the US perceive it as a threat. This is how you answered. You put US because you know they deny the climate, but they are just slightly below the other rich countries, right? Finally, let's look at the carbon dioxide right now. That was a few of the questions were about the climate. Because of course, over time, while the child mortality was dropping down, carbon dioxide went up at the right end of the income scale. This is what it looked like in 2022. The last 20 years, US and EU actually declined CO2 emissions, like what we've been aiming for. We succeeded. Nobody knows that. We never talk about success, neither in child mortality nor in carbon dioxide. So if we split these countries as well into 10 deciles, you can see how the richest, of course, emit a lot more. I fly a lot of airplanes, super bad. So the difference within countries is the same when it comes to carbon dioxide like with child mortality. So I want to show the big picture of the world and make sure when we discuss future of health, we shouldn't have the whole world distorted in our heads, because then the discussion is useless, right? So it's better to check the data and make sure we know what it looks like. This is the emission. We can put them together, right? Here we have the need for sustainability. We need to be more sustainable. Actually, not them, those at the poor end. They need more development. And we already know how to do that, right? But most people are in the middle. They have a little of both these problems. That's the big picture of the world today, which I want to make sure is updated in your minds. So when we move on in the afternoon, I'm going to revisit the other two themes of mental health questions, and then the last one about aging into the future with the demographic forecast, where you were super wrong as well. But I'm going to fix that. Thank you very much.
And now we're changing direction again, going towards mental health. Of course, nothing is unconnected, and particularly during the pandemic, infectious disease very much led to a crisis in mental health. To start us off, Ola Rosling is going to join us again very briefly to review some questions on this topic. Ola.
So back again to my questions. The reason it takes too much time is because people speak too slow. I think you understand that by now. Here are the mental health questions that you answered. The first one, just quickly. What share of humanity are diagnosed with depression according to WHO? Correct answer, 5%. But when we want to care about people, we don't want to neglect it, so we exaggerate it in our minds. Next question. Actually, the data about depression first. This is the Lancet paper about prevalence of depression caused by the COVID pandemic. I just wanted to highlight the data problem. There's huge uncertainty. This is their estimates, and here is the underlying data. Yeah, you're laughing at it. It's a peer-reviewed scientific paper. We need to be a bit more careful, sorry. Next question. What happened to suicide rate globally, age-adjusted, during the last 20 years? Did it go up, the same, or down? And of course, you don't want to neglect the suffering of people who end their lives, right? So what I'm asking is, did the trend go like this, or in the middle, or down? Correct answer on most of my questions is the positive answer, because that's where people are most wrong, right? And actually, I was surprised. So we contacted like 3 or 4 suicide researchers, even to dare to show this, because it feels so counterintuitive. As long as we know that suicides are increasing somewhere, here are your results, right? And they are increasing somewhere. That's actually the real line. In the US, the line goes the other way. So maybe we're shaping our worldview based on the US media, right? And in US it was true, so we generalize it to the world. Now, suicide is terrible, and most mental health is difficult to get the audience to laugh, right? But here is one question. In which countries are people on average least satisfied with their life? Okay? Low, middle, or high? And I don't have to ask you to raise your hands because you have already answered. Here are your answers. Now you can guess which one is the right answer. Did anybody, yes, raise your hand, did you ever ask for lower salary? Like, oh, please, boss, I feel I'm so unhappy. Can you lower my salary a little bit? Because I think poor people are happier, right? That's how you answer. It's fascinating. As if And this is what the public answer as well. There is a taboo saying that money makes you happier. But why are we struggling to get more money then, if that wasn't the case? These are the averages of all countries. Income and happiness, the ladder of life. How happy are you between, or happy, it's life satisfaction really. And the region and size is this. So over time, of course, it changes. Keep an eye on India now when I start moving. India, the big red button, managed to be less happy with more money. That's quite unusual, actually. If you don't distribute the money, of course, that's happening because people see their rich neighbor. Anyway, in the low-income countries, they are generally lower down. There are huge differences between countries and, of course, between individuals. But even the happiest low-income country, Mozambique, is below all the high-income countries. And we, the rich people sitting in this fancy room, how can we even dare to imagine that people in low income who see their children dying are happier than us? Okay? Please laugh at that. That was very, very fun. Thank you.
We've heard so much today about the connection between science and society and the need for the two to work together. And this last main section of the meeting is devoted to that topic of how to get the best out of science and society cooperating. To introduce us to this, we have Ola again. Ola, be fast.
Yes. This is the last session, and we have 2 questions remaining on which you answered like this. It's about cancer and aging, 2 very fun topics. So if we could cure all cancer and everything else stays the same, how much longer would life expectancy be on average? 3, 11, or 19? Here you were over-optimistic because I think actually 3 is the bad answer, right? And that's actually the correct one. There are so many other things that will kill us. Yeah, it's fun, right? There's like a smorgasbord of causes of death. But we love to find the magic wand, like, can we cure cancer? And you hear it a lot in the media, and it sounds like the thing, right? Then we will live forever. Absolutely not. Okay, here's the next question, the last one, and it will bridge over to the last session of today, which is about the future, namely the aging of people. So this is a quite simple question about, of all the new seniors in the world, 65 plus people, what share will be in high-income countries? Like, what share of aging population is in high-income countries? That's what we are asking here. Is it 15, 35, or 55? The majority. I don't know what's good and bad here, really. It's more of a demographic ignorance that we're measuring. And the correct answer is 15%. It's a small fraction. And now that I introduced to you that there are low, middle, and high income, you realize the other ones are quite many, and they are healthier. Here's the population pyramid without women and men. It's only people back in 1950, and people got older and older and had new children, and fertility rate changed. Today the world looks like this. It's a consequence of the past, how the shape of the pyramid looks. This is the world today. Let's move forward and see the UN population forecast into 2100. We're moving even further. Here you can see the high-income countries. It's a rectangle, more or less, right? Very predictable generation sizes. Same thing goes for upper middle by the end of the century. Right now, they're going to see, within the next 80 years, they're going to see a decline in all generation sizes, right? And down here, that's China and India, basically. And then at the bottom, we have the low income, where the number of children are still increasing, but it's expected to become flat as well. The question was asking between 24 and 2050. Here are the new seniors, right? The light shade is today, and then the extra people are highlighted. That's 15%. So if you produce, say, diabetes medicine, here are your customers. This is where the new, of course, they have less money, but some of them are quite rich. So if we look at that, actually, as the number of people on 50 plus instead of 65, because diabetes, for example, starts being more prevalent there, the percentage of these old people with diabetes is actually the same everywhere. So let's instead imagine this is a rough forecast of diabetes in the future. This is what to expect. And this is when we confuse those at the bottom, as being developing countries, we don't realize that in the middle group here, the middle income countries, we have the largest increase of old people ever in human history to expect in the future. That's where the aging population is largest, right? So I want to summarize my participation here by putting all these images together into one big future worldview. So at the top, let's look at communicable diseases. As people get richer, they die and suffer less from infections, bacteria and viruses, right? That's the communicable. That's the burden of disease, DALYs, per 100,000. The share instead becomes non-communicable, such as cancer and diabetes, etc. Let's not forget the dying children. So we put them into the picture because you will not suffer from these disabilities unless you survive childhood, right? It's easy to start talking about non-communicable in high income as if that problem was solved over there. It is not. In the future then, more people there, and if people get richer, child mortality can decline. I think that's the future of health. Thank you.